Can you feel it in the air? Diablo 2 fever is a-brewing. Welcome to GameBase, and we're gonna be looking at more Diablo 2 content for the next couple of weeks, because it's kinda caught on, man. We've been super hyped for Diablo 2, but enough about that. I have played Diablo 2 for quite a bit, and there are some things that I wish I knew going into the game. Well, maybe you're a returning player, maybe you already know all of this, maybe you're just starting with Diablo 2 for the first time, maybe you played 3 and haven't played or haven't played any Diablo yet. This video is for you. It's gonna be a quick, small, and sweet piece of a couple of tips and tricks that I kind of wish I knew when I started, so hopefully they can help you. And if you have your own tips and tricks, you can leave the comment down below. But let's start with number 1. The first thing I am kind of advising pretty much anybody that is playing Diablo 2 for the first time is don't put points everywhere. Specifically, kind of open up your skill tree and look at what you have, because obviously you're gonna play for the first time. You're gonna want to test something out. You want to see what's fun. So choose 1 to 3 skills you really think are really cool and focus on those first. The reason I say this is that because the way that the skill system works for Diablo 2 is every time you level up, and a couple of times when you get a quest, a reward or something like that, you get a skill point. And you put that into a spell or a skill or a buff or a passive or whatever you want, and that essentially gets stronger. And you can put up to 20 points in each essentially specific skill, and that essentially makes it stronger and stronger and stronger. Now, if you start to put points all over the place, you're gonna be like a jack of all trades, but a master of none, clearly. But not only that, you will end up like me 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 years ago when I played my first druid, and I've liked to have fire spells. I wanted to be a bear, and I wanted to summon wolves, and I wanted to summon worms, and I got to Diablo and I just didn't have the damage to beat him ever, because it took me 3 hours to teleport back, buy potions, come back in, fight him, make a portal, go back, get potions again, go back in, and it took me 3 hours to get like 10% of his HP. And then I talked to a friend and was like, wait man, what the fuck, why are you getting all the points? Pick 3 skills, 1 to 3 skills. The reason I'm saying that is because if it takes 20 points to max out a skill, then essentially you'd get like around level 60-ish before you get all of those skills leveled up, since that's probably where you'll get around nightmare hell level. It depends on how you play. I personally, when I played initially, I farmed the last act up until I was level 50 because I just wanted all that Bale loot. But you can probably be around halfway through nightmare, maybe even a little bit in hell, up around level 60, and that's a realistic place where people can get without spending too much time on their character, because obviously the max level is 99, but you don't really want to plan at least your first character to have a build that essentially completes at around level 99, because that's gonna take a long time to get to that point. You don't really need it, right? Because you just won't feel complete. So having about 3 main skills that you like is pretty much crucial, because that's when your build kind of has at least a core, and then you can start piling up on top of there from wherever, going into whatever direction you want. And I would strongly recommend leveling at least one of the skill up to 20 plus 20 points before going into any other skill, so that you can at least have something really hard to hit those bosses with, so you don't hit a wall where you cannot progress because you just don't have enough damage. Now, the next thing you need to know is 1-point wonders. Now, what are 1-point wonders? This kind of goes into, putting your skills in the right place. There are a few exceptions, and those are the skills that we call 1-point wonders. 1-point wonders is basically you put 1 point into a skill and you get a major buff to your character, but then each subsequent point that you put gives you a little bit less, a little bit less, a little bit less, a little bit less. So sometimes just 1 point is just enough. Let's take the sorceress as an example. Sorceress, you can play her with fire spells, cold spells, or lightning spells. Whichever way you play it, you probably want to put at least 1 point into warmth. Warmth is mana generation, mana regeneration. That's in the fire skill, but that doesn't really matter in which skill it is. But warmth essentially gives you, I don't know, about 30-something% mana regen on the first point, but then each subsequent points give you like 5% more. So like the first point has a lot of value because it just gives you from 0 to 30, but each subsequent point gives you a little bit less, a little bit less. And now if it's not 30, you'll correct me in the comments, but that's not the point. That is what we call a 1-point wonder. Each class has this as well. I think barbarians and Amazons have like passives to weapons or crits or dodge or stuff like that. If you're playing a druid and you want to go, let's say, a summoner druid, or you want to go a spellcaster druid, maybe you want to put a point into werewolf for that increased run speed or extra stamina so that you can just traverse the speed more until you get your teleports later on into the game. Those essentially 1-point wonders are really good for your character, especially if they work towards your build, because it has to go with synergies. And that brings us to the third thing you should know before playing Diablo 2, and that is skill synergies. I mentioned before that you should probably pick about 3 skills to focus on, and that's usually kind of a good number where pretty much all classes have 3 skills that synergize with each other to make each other stronger. Let's take Sorceress, for instance. If you play, let's say, a Fire Sorceress and you have Fire Bolt, Fireball, and I don't know, let's say Meteor, they kind of each play off each other a little bit, and when you put points into one, the other one gets buffed as well, it gets more damage. Or let's say you're playing Fire Claws Druid, right? And you want to get those Fire Claws, but they're a little down the road. Well, you can start putting points into Firestorm or Molten Boulder. And by putting more points into this, Fire Claws will have, I think, 22% more damage per point put into the Fire Elemental trees. So they synergize with each other. So sure, you can pick 3 main skills to play, which is probably more important. But if you also look at the synergies between these skills, then you'll actually make the skills even stronger. And those points put into those skills are gonna be even more value. Value that turns into damage, because, you know, more loot, more damage, more loot. And that also brings us to the next bit. The 4th point is plus the skills. This is a specific stat that you will find a little bit later into your normal playthrough, where items will start to have plus to skills, plus to summon Spirit Wolf, plus to Fireball, stuff like that. You'll see it plus to summon skeletons, right? You'll see items, actually they turn up pretty early when they have specific plus skills. Now what these items do, they essentially give you a bonus to your skill level by putting some virtual points into your skills, let's say. It's usually 1 or 2 or 3 early on, but they eventually get to be higher and higher. Then you will get to items that give you plus to all skills, essentially. So each skill that you have a point in, it gets an additional point from that specific item. And this is where 1-point wonders become even stronger, because let's say you're playing that Fire Sorceress that I mentioned before, and you have 1 point into Warmth, then you just have generic gear that you like because they give you some bonuses, and it just so happens that some of those pieces have some plus to warmth. So eventually it gets to have more and more points, and because you've unlocked that skill by putting 1 point into it, you've unlocked the possibility of plus to skills items, improving that skill even more and making it even more stronger. And obviously this goes for your main skills as well. If you're playing, let's say, a Fire Claws Druid, like I mentioned earlier, you can have plus to Fire Claws, and when you hit with your Fire Claws, they will just hit harder. There's one important thing to know about plus to skills items, which I also didn't know when I first started out, is that they don't contribute to synergy. So we're taking the Fire Claws Druid example once again. So let's say Fire Claws will be your main thing, right? But if you have plus if you have points into Firestorm, Molten Boulder, and I think Fissure as well, and probably something like that, then Fire Claws gets better. But those points have to be manually put in by you. If you have items that give you plus to Firestorm, those extra points do not contribute into buffing your Fire Claws. So you kind of have to think about it that way. If you really want to min-max it that much, and if the point value is kind of similar, maybe you want to not put as many points into Fire Claws and instead put them into Firestorm, or basically whatever the item gives you plus to X skill, use that skill as your primary, and the synergy comes from from all the other skills. But this is just a little bit min-maxing, and this won't really matter once you're maxing out the skill anyway, but just a little tidbit there. So keep in mind, plus 2 skills items are really good, but they do not fuel in that synergy. Very important to remember. And last but not least, the 5th thing you should probably know that will make your life a little bit easier is mercenaries. This is all in the veins of starting up your character, by the way. Mercenaries are actually pretty good. There are some that are better than others, but when it comes to mercenaries, you should definitely get one and actually equip it with really good items, because it will end up being a boost for you. You're obviously starting with Act 1, which has the Rogue. I personally found that taking the Cold Arrow rogue is the best because you might find one of those two rares or elites or champions or whatever that are constantly kind of chasing you down and you kind of don't want to be hit. Having them slowed down really helps. It doesn't always work on bosses. I don't think it almost ever works on bosses, but for those dangerous mobs, having your follower be able to, you know, slow them down is really good. There is one important thing that you should know about cold effects, and this is also on the mercenary and on yourself. If you kill a target that's frozen, essentially, that's basically you being slowed down, chilled, essentially, its corpse destroyed, so you cannot summon things from its corpse if you have that kind of a skill. If you're playing a necromancer, if you're playing a druid and you want your direwolves to eat and get enraged, or if you're playing some of the corpse eater vines, then essentially you will lose that. But your enemy will lose that ability as well. So if you're fighting, let's say, Fallen's in Act 1, and you kill the little dudes with frost effects, basically the cold arrow from the mercenary, the shaman won't be able to resurrect the little dudes anymore. So that's also a bonus, keep that in mind. Act 2 mercenaries are the best, which is a little bit of a shame because I kind of wanted to be a little bit more balanced so you have a little bit of option, but undeniably the Act 2 mercenaries will be the best overall. You don't have to stay with them past Act 2, but they are the best. And my personal advice, when you're playing normal, you can probably go for a defense or offense aura mercenary because the combat one is just a little bit weird. The combat aura is prayer, and that just takes away a little bit of a mana to regen your HP. If you're just obviously playing something that doesn't need that much mana, which is a little bit unlikely, then I suppose that can work out for you. But if you're playing a heavy attack based character, you can go with offense because it gives you blessed aim and you get more attack rating, or you can go with defense that gives you defense rating, which is pretty much best for all of it, especially for summoning classes, because you know your summons kind of die really quick, or you can give them an attack rating. It doesn't really matter. But once you get into Nightmare, the defense one gets Holy Freeze, which is probably arguably the best aura that you can get because it just slows everybody, does damage, and it's pretty good to control the amounts of mobs that you have around you. And of course, going forward, even if you do intend to swap from Act 2 or not keep the Act 2, mercenaries can equip class-specific gear. The rogue can equip the bows from Amazons, and the barbarians in Act 5 can equip barbarian gear. It's not really that important because the best gear you'll want for mercenaries are most likely not going to be class-related, and the class-related gear that usually gives points to skills don't really affect mercenaries anyway. The ideal gear that you would want to give mercenaries is aura gear that buffs you and buffs it as well. And you can also give it ethereal gear as well, because ethereal gear does not lose durability, or any type of gear rather does not lose durability once it's on your mercenary. So that's really good. You can go for that because there are a lot of good ethereal drops that are just, you know, just gonna go to waste if you wear it because it's just gonna break down. But yeah, definitely gear up your mercenary because it can be a really good bonus to you, especially if you're playing with the Act 2. It can be a really good tank if you're playing a caster or a range character or a summoner or anything like that that just cannot take a lot of damage. These are the 5 things I wish I knew when playing Diablo 2 when it comes to like character related, when you're starting off, when you're building your character and stuff like that. A little bit of quality of life, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. We're gonna have more of these types of videos, and next week is gonna be a little bit more loot related. But hope you enjoyed it, and of course, if you have tips that you wish you knew before, you can share them down in the comment section below, and let's see how everybody's playing Diablo 2. Are you gonna be playing Resurrected? You should be playing Resurrected. Thank you for watching the video. See you next time.